We're on Full Fizz Thursday. Welcome back. Another episode of Surly Talk Sports. Of course, she's a short week here in New Zealand. Hope you enjoyed your Waitangi Day, and if you pulled off the hack, took off the Monday and got 4 days off, hope you had an absolute doozy. The weather turned it on, and I'm sure plenty of Simon Kennerings were on the menu as you tucked into a grouse weekend of sport. Geez, there was a lot that went down. A couple quick mentions here as well, because they won't feature later in the pod. Lewis Hamilton off to Ferrari. Can't wait to watch how that went down on next year's season of Drive to Survive. 11 years at Mercedes, and he's jumped ship over to where that iconic Ferrari red. Would love to see how much money was involved in that deal. A massive move from Lewis, though he's so synonymous with that Mercedes brand. Geez, I hope Liam Lawson, this can benefit him somehow, because the Flying Kiwi certainly deserves to be in the old Formula One. Stephen Adams, he'll also be wearing red next year. Once he gets back from that ACL, of course, he's rehabbing at the moment, but he was involved in a trade from the Memphis Grizzlies over to the Houston Rockets. An interesting one for the Rockets. They traded Victor Oladipo in a bit of a salary dump and 3 second-round picks in order to get the big Kiwi. So Memphis, they free up a lot of salary cap for next year, but for the Rockets, they've already got Sengun, who's playing great basketball, second year in the league, looking every bit an all-star. So perhaps the big Kiwi either comes off the bench or they look to shift Sengun into power forward. It's going to be interesting to watch, but I'm sure a lot of Kiwi basketball fans got a new team over the weekend and they will now be supporting Houston. And then in arguably the most important news, Northcote preseason, she gets underway tonight. Geez, February footy, how good is it? Grassroots, without the roots there is no tree. Excited to rip in with the lads. It's a bit longer of a break than what we usually get. Summer's been grouse, put the old feet up, but now it's time to get into the work. Messaged the trainer to try and see if there was a Bronco on the menu. Didn't get a lot of comms from him, but woke up this morning and there's certainly a scent of one in the air. So if you're interested in my time, hit me up tomorrow. I might flick it through to you so you can see what old Surly managed to punch out. Been banging out a couple Ks in preparation, just your 2-3K hits, nothing too extreme. Just trying to offset the multiple Simon Kennerings I ripped into over the summer, but looking forward to getting amongst it. If you're in Auckland and you're looking for a new footy club, rugby union of course, then make sure you come on down to the Coat. Would love to see you there tonight. The culture on and off the field, she's second to none. And it would be great to see some Surly listeners wrapped in maroon and gold this season and up the mighty Coat. Of course, shout out to the TAB for partnering with this podcast. None of this would be possible without them. A massive weekend ahead on the old Carmichael punt, the Super Bowl, arguably the biggest single event in American sport. That goes down on your Monday, so plenty of betting options around that. NRL trials, we've got one this weekend. How good? Six Nations, all that continues to rock. Of course, I'll give you my best bets later on in the podcast, but if you are having a flutter this weekend, please do so through our mates at the TAB. Really appreciate their support. But that's enough from me in this old intro. A bit of a ramble there, so let's get into it. Talk some rugby league. How good, like I mentioned before, she's back this weekend. The trials, Manly taking on the Bunnies. Of course, those two sides heading over to Vegas, so they're ripping into it a little earlier than the others. This week, though, I wanted to sink the teeth into some of my predictions, and it's not your top 8, bottom 9. I'll get into that next week, but more clubs that I think recruited the best, players that I'm really excited to watch this year, that type of chatter. So let's get into it. We'll kick her off with clubs that I think recruited the best. My top 3, of course, the Warriors have to be in there. And before you roll your eyes, if you're not a fellow Wars fan, then hear me out. The addition of Roger, him returning back to the club, of course, our one-time Dally M winner, our former skipper. It's going to be so good to see him draped back in Warriors colours. Then we have Chanel Harris-Tavita also coming back into the mixer, a great all-round footballer. And someone that is going to be a great asset for us, that Battle of the Six jersey. Geez, is she heating up. Then Purdy, a massive addition from the Broncos. I racked on about him last week and why I love him joining the club. But an Origin footballer to play in the second row. Bloody top shelf stuff. So I really do rate our recruitment this year. And I genuinely classify it amongst the top 3 in the competition. We got stronger, and our top 17 is going to be even better than what it was last year. Moving on to another team I think did well, and I got a shout out to Wayne Bennett's Dolphins. The amount of players and top line players he's been able to attract in just the second year as his head coach and the second year as a club in this competition is truly elite. I genuinely believe that if it wasn't Wayne at the helm, then they wouldn't be able to do any of this, but they've gained Herbie Farnworth from the Broncos and Thomas Flegler, 2 massive additions to their roster, and players that I think the Broncos would have been stinging to lose. Herbie, the old herbivore, he was eating up meaties last year, a genuine strike centre and a great footballer, English international, and he's going to be massive for the Finns in the centres. Then you look at Thomas Flegler. Bit of a breakout year for him last year, of course, represented Queensland in Origin as a result, and he was genuinely one of those top 5, top 6 props going around in the NRL. He's really going to beef up Redcliffe's propping stocks and be a future leader for this club as well. Chuck into the mixer a Jake Averillo from the Bulldogs, who you could argue never really quite reached his potential at Canterbury Bankstown. He's a genuine flyer, he's got express pace, and he looks to be one of the great unleashed attacking weapons, so if Wayne can get the best out of him, then that would be another handy pickup. 3 great signings there for the Finns, and I'm excited to see how they go this year. Then finally, another club that I think recruited really well has to be the Bulldogs. I heard an interesting stat the other day. No one remains in their top 30 roster from 2021, so they've had a complete clean out. Gussie Gould, of course, he's famous for that Penrith 5-year plan that he implemented. It appears he's doing the same here at the Doggies. Cameron Serraldo, he's probably right at the helm as well. They're doing their best to recruit blokes left, right and centre. They've picked up Bronson Cherry from the Bulldogs, of course, back from that ban. I think he was getting on the old roids, but he was a talented footballer at the Sharkies before he pissed hot. Then we've got Stephen Crichton from the Panthers, again, top 3 centre in the game. Missed a big moment as well. He always stands up in the game's biggest stages, and he's going to be massive for them. Rumours he could be playing at the back. I like him in the centres, on an edge alongside Matty Bird and Viliami Kikau. That would be great to see that old Penrith pairing link back up. Connor Tracy, a handy pickup from the Sharkies as well, a utility that could find himself wearing the 1 jersey, but they also grabbed Blake Taff from the Bunnies as well. Then they've got Salmon, aka the weak-gutted dog, as referred to by Ricky Stewart. Josh Curran, geez, that one hurts the heartstrings to mention him in this list of recruits. Really sad to see him go from the Warriors. Of course, fan favourite, being an iconic footballer for us, and not seeing that mullet trot out onto Mount Smart, that is going to really hurt, but he's got a massive opportunity here at the Dogs, the chance to wear that starting 13 jersey, and I think he's going to come on in leaps and bounds. I'll touch on him again as my players that I expect to have a breakout year this year, but a huge pickup for them in old Joshy Cuzza. Drew Hutchinson, Mr. Utility, the poor man's Mitch Orbison, he's going to offer them some massive depth in the halves. Curdy Mann, workhorse from the Knights, Jake Turpin from the Roosters, and then they also picked up Falmasili from the Dolphins. Their one criticism, they're probably a bit light in the middle, a bit short on propping stocks, but they've got utilities galore, and I think they've made some massive additions in this off-season, which can only lead to future success for the Dogs. Might not come this year, but I think over the next couple years, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. On the flip side, the teams that recruited the worst, and I was actually getting ready to spray the Dragons here, but I think they've done all right considering what they were up against. Of course, adding a new coach in Flanagan, he's won a premiership before, he's a smart operator, he knows what he's doing, but it's going to take him a couple years to be able to implement his blueprint. And saying that, he's already made a few big moves and a couple big acquisitions, which I really rate. Hame Sally, he's a great pickup from the Rabbitohs. I think he'll be massive for them in the middle. And alongside Blake Laurie, they got a pretty handy little propping duo there. Kyle Flanagan, of course, son of the coach. And geez, feel sorry for the kid. If he doesn't put on some good performances, the Dragons fans are going to come for him. Could they be the poor man's Nathan and Ivan? We soon shall see, but he's going to get every opportunity here to rip and tear, whether that's in the 6 or 7 jersey jersey or in the 9. Going to be interesting to see how Flano goes. Tom Eisenhuth from the Storm, handy footballer. Corey Allen was a great pickup from the Roosters before he did his ACL in training. That's tough bickies. And then Raymond Faitala Mariner from the Bulldogs, of course, a late addition who they've picked up to boost up their second row stocks. He can be good, old RFM, a double barrel last name as well, which I always think is great to add to any rugby league squad. So shout out to the Dragons. They've avoided making this recruited the worst list, despite my first impressions being that they didn't do much this off-season. 2 teams that did make it though, and one will be controversial, but bear with me. The first one is the Raiders. I think their only addition of note is Zach Hosking, no relation to, of course, News Talk ZB anchor Mike Hosking. A great pickup for them from the Panthers, a handy footballer with still so much untapped potential, starved for opportunities at the Panthers, and I think in this Raiders pack, which is incredibly strong, he will be a handy gain. Their losses though, Jack Wyden, massive for me. For so long, he has been their star player, their marquee, the go-to guy for them on attack. They now are without a 6, and instead they're going young, and I think it could come back to hurt them. They also lost Matt Frawley to the Super League, Harley Smith-Shields, young hot boy to the Titans, and then Jared Croker, of course, the Raiders legend, who retired after getting spanked in his 300th game by the Warriors. SJ with that intercept off the kickoff to rub salt in the wound. How good was that? But for me, that's not enough for the Raiders, and I think they're going to have a tough year in 2024. The second team that I think recruited the worst, and hear me out here because I still think they're a top 4 side. Of course, they were in last year's grand final. It is the Broncos. They only added Fletcher Baker and Jaden Hunt, 2 fringies that I don't think will make their 17. When you run through their losses, though, they've lost some genuine talent across the park. Herbie Farnworth, like I mentioned, gone to the Finns. Thomas Flegler, he joined them at Redcliffe. Keenan Palasia, he's gone to the Titans. He was in their 17 as well. And then Purdy Capewell, of course, to the mighty Waz. So that is 4 players from their 17 from grand final day that they are missing, to only add a couple fringies or blokes that'll be looking to work their way into the mixer. That's a big loss for the Broncos. And like I said before, I still expect them to be a top 4 footy side. I just don't have them sitting in that 1 or 2 spot. I'll get into my predictions next week, but there's an early little insight for you. In terms of teams that I expect to be the biggest risers and really climb up the ladder this year as compared to 2023, I got to chuck the Bunnies in there. Still shocks me that they didn't play finals footy last year. They finished in 9th, just a bee's dick outside, but I have them in the top 4 this year. I think that Jack Wyden signing is going to have a massive impact. I think he'll be back in Origin this year, a quality footballer that gives them some more strike. They're just so stacked. If Latrell can stay healthy, Cody Walker, Campbell Graham, Damien Cook, the Beach Flags champ. Could be a great year for the Burrow and a big season for Bunnies fans. In terms of other teams I expect to rise, the Dolphins sat in 13th last year, which was a pretty good showing for their first year in the comp. I really like the depth that they've got in their roster this year. There's going to be some quality footballers that are potentially missing out each week. It does come with a bit of a caveat though. If there are injuries to guys like Jeremy Marshall-King or Sean O'Sullivan in their spine, then I think they could settle around this 13th mark. If not though, if they can keep a healthy 17 for the majority of the season, which is bloody hard to do in a grueling competition like the NRL, then I could see them sitting right on the fringe of that 8, which would be interesting to see. Titans, I also expect them to be a big riser this year. Desi Hasler at the helm. They've got a strong footy squad. Bo Fermor and co. all returning from big injuries. I think the Titans will surprise a few teams this year. They finished in 14th last year, so I expect better from them. In terms of your biggest fallers, I've got the Raiders, touched on them before. They finished in 8th last year. I have them in the bottom 4 this year. Again, another spoiler alert for next week. They've got a great forward pack, the likes of your Joseph Tapine, Horsburgh, Hudson Young, Zach Hosking and co. But their backline is just looking so light. Outside of Fogarty and Matty Tomoko, the Kiwi strike weapon, I just don't think they have a lot of weapons in their duffel bag. So I expect them to battle a little, especially against those top sides. And I really expect the competition to be tight this year. I genuinely think there could be 1 or 2 wins between the side that finishes in 7th and the side that finishes in 13th or 14th. I'm expecting a congested ladder, and I think the Raiders will fall as a result of losing old Jackie boy. Players I'm most excited to watch this year, I've gone through and named 3. Again, I could name half the competition because that is the benefits of the great game of rugby league. First up though, it goes without saying, extremely excited to see Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, RTS, the king of calves, trot back onto Go Media Stadium. Got some of the best footwork in the game. His GPM or Goosies per minute scale is off the Richter scale. So I'm excited to see what he can do in that centre role. Webby's already said that he's going to play a roaming type of role as well. Get his hands on the football and pop up all over the park. A bit like a Tommy Trbojevic in State of Origin, which straight away gets me absolutely fizzing. Second player I'm keen to see is returning from injury. The great man, Lil Pappy, Ryan Papenhuyzen. He's had a tough 2 years. He's been battling to really get consistent time on the park, but fingers crossed after a great pre-season, bit of rehab, and he's back out there mixing it with the Storm lads now, that he can stay healthy and string together some consecutive games. I think people forget just how good Pappy was in his prime. He was a genuine throbber, really ripped and teared, and he will be a massive addition to the Storm attack, which at time last year lacked a bit of razzle and strike power. So it'll be great to see him back in the 1 jersey. And then the third player that I'm excited to watch is Jack Whiten at the Rabbitohs. Touched on him before, how the Rabbitohs use him, whether he's in the centres, whether he makes a bit of a cameo in the halves, could even play lock or second row. Keen to see how Jack goes. Of course, he's been that star, that standout player for Canberra for so long. Now he's going to be surrounded by throbbers. So his addition to the Bunnies, I think, will be what they need to push themselves into a top 4 team and a genuine premiership threat this year, as he pushes to return his way to State of Origin. In terms of your rookies, there's a couple that stand out for me, and this could also double as a bit of a fantasy, who you should grab or who I'm looking at for this year on the old Fantasy NRL app. I like the look of Kale Ido, Tony Ido's son. Of course, he's the Sharks centre. In order for him to start, there would have to be a bit of a move, and they'd have to shift Talakai maybe into the second row or perhaps onto that bench middle spot. Ido, though, he looks every bit a genuine footballer, an ex-Warriors under-20s player. He then moved to the Knights before landing at the Sharks, debuted for them back in 2022, but he's just had the one opportunity, been starved for first grade football. He's been growing great guns in the New South Wales Cup as well. I believe he won their Player of the Year, so definitely a name to look out for, and if Fitzgibbon gives him the nod, I think he could be a real handful out there for the Sharks. Then for the Raiders, and this is a team where I think their fantasy value is through the roof. Touched on before how their backline is missing some big names, so that gives the opportunities for some young bolters to really take their chance with both hands. First one, KO Weeks, who's actually come across from Manly. He looks set to start in the 6 jersey. He's in my fantasy team, and there's been decent raps from him. Alongside Fogarty, he'll kind of take control of the game, play that conductor role, and then KO, he'll get the opportunity to just run his edge, add a bit of razzle, and see what the kid can do. He's played 9 games so far, so he's not on debut, got a touch of experience about him, and I'm really keen to see how he goes. A massive gap to fill there for the Green Machine. In terms of breakout players that I think are going to have a massive year, they're already good footballers, but I think this could push them up another notch. First one, Dream Buller, aka I Have a Dream, Buller Vanaka. Images broke last week of Greg Inglis, the great man GI, heading into Tigers training. It's since come out that he's playing a bit of a mentoring role for the young Tigers fullback. This can only mean great things. Of course, he was massive for them last year, had a great season in the 1 as a rookie. Hopefully he can take his game to another level with one of the great mentors chewing his ear off and giving him some handy advice. So look for a massive year for young Buller. Secondly, another young fullback, Jaden Campbell, who finally gets the keys to the kingdom at the Titans. For so long, the problem for them, the dilemma has been figuring out how you can have AJ Brimson and Jaden Campbell in the same 17. Desi Hasler, he's moved Brimo to the centres, so JC gets the nod at the back. Every chance he's had in first grade so far, he's been electric. He's so quick, he's got that feet, not afraid to chance his arm. Only a small lad, but he punches well and truly above his weight, and I think Jaden Campbell is in for a massive season. Then the next two, Spencer Leniu, who of course has made the move from the defending champs, the Panthers, over to the Roosters, the boys from Bondi, and I think he's going to have a massive year where he establishes himself as a genuine starting first-grade prop, a real enforcer, aggressive as fuck, and him alongside Jared Waerea-Hargreaves. Geez, they could prove to be a real handful. Keep an eye on May as well in the propping stocks. I think he's going to have a great year. And then Sammy Walker, another fellow Rooster. I think this is the year where he really takes his game to another level. Of course, in his rookie year, he was getting all the accolades, could be the future Origin 6 or 7 and whatnot, but I think this year is the one where he really kicks on. He's going to be goal kicking, he's going to be probably that main playmaker for the Roosters as well, alongside Luke Keary, so if he can stay healthy, then I think Sammy Walks could be in for a massive one. Origin bolters, for me, I've penciled out 2 straight away, and it's weird to be talking Origin before the season even starts, but this is my prediction, so bear with me. For the mighty New South Wales Blues, I think this year could be finally the year where Big Hamole Olakau'atu gets to wear the sky blue. He's been on the fringe for a couple years now, fresh off signing a massive deal with Manly. Shit did the lad get paid, and deservedly so. One of the great strike second rowers in the competition, loves scoring himself a meaty, and outside Cherry Evans, he's established a heck of a combination, so expecting another big 2024 for old Hamole. And then for Queensland, and this one's a bit tougher to predict, but I could see him playing in that kind of 14 role. It would have to mean an injury to a Harry Grant or a Ben Hunt, or maybe even he wears the starting 6 if Munster is out. But I think Ezra Mam is right on the fringe. Of course, had a massive grand final last year. I think he bagged a hat-trick if my memory serves me correct. Wham bam, thank you, Mam. Talented footballer, express pace, another one who can just split the game open at the drop of a hat. He's almost Munster-like in some aspects. Queensland, for me, they're fucked this year. Of course, we saw Cam Smith. He's had enough. Pulled pin. Doesn't want to coach the lads this year. He'd rather coach his local under 15 side. To be fair, the lure of oranges at half-time has broken down many a bloke, so Cam, he is only human, but to me this screams a bloke that's identified a sinking ship. He can see that New South Wales are going to sweep the Maroons this year, and he's got off early. Writing is on the wall type stuff, but I genuinely think Ezra Mam, he is one of those Origin footballers that is really going to have a massive impact on State of O in the years to come. Could 2024 be a year too early? We'll soon see, but like I mentioned before, a couple injuries, and I think he'll find himself right in the mixer. And then finally, and arguably the most important category for me, because I've always been a massive advocate that if you have a double barrel last name, then you were born to be a rugby league footballer. Just wanted to point out that the Waz, we have 5 double barrel last names in our top 30, which is massive stuff. Of course, adding RTS and CHT back in the mixer boosts us up with another 2. Rumours Braden Hamlin Uele for 2025. Of course, we lose Adam Fanua-Blake though, so that's a straight trade. 1-for-1 there with the Sharkies. Smart play from both sides. But CHT, DWZ, RTS, AFB, nothing screams premiership winning more than that. 5 of the best, 16% of our top 30 squad is rocking the double banger. Good luck beating the Waz this year. How good is that? Like I've said several times, I'll touch on my top 8, bottom 9 next week's show as we start to rip into some predictions. Preseason code this week for a couple teams, then everyone gets into it next week. All sides out on the paddock, plus of course your Indigenous versus Māori All-Stars game. Fizzing at the bung for that. I'm actually heading over to Sydney next Thursday. Doggies are playing that preseason game that night. Might trot along if Joshy Curran isn't named in the Indigenous side, although I expect he will be. Footy's just around the corner. Be keen to hear some of your guys' predictions too on a few of the categories that I've mentioned, because no doubt you have some good opinions. There's a few players or teams that I've missed out, so flick me a message or leave your thoughts in the comments below. How good? It was a tough old week for New Zealand Super Rugby sides that decided to head abroad, with just the Blues getting the win from the 3 that jumped on board the old Air New Zealand Express. The Blues 43-7 over the Tokyo Sun Goliath, and what was a good win for them, but it did come at a big cost, an unfortunate one at that, with skipper Paddy Tuipulotu ruled out for about 10-ish weeks with a broken jaw. Shit, do I feel sorry for the big fella. You'd have to think the stage was set for a massive year for him. Played limited limited footy last year with injury. As a result, that cost him a spot in that All Blacks World Cup squad. Sammy Whitelock, Brodie Retallick, they both depart, so the writing was on the wall and it looked like he could play his way back into Razor's squad. To lose 10 weeks of code straight up after coming back from a bad injury run really is tough luck. Add to that, he was just named skipper replacing Dalton Papali'i. Shit, tough times for old Paddy T. Fingers crossed he can get out on the paddock ahead of schedule because I think he's going to be massive for the Blues, but well done to them. I thought standout player for them was Stephen Perofeta. He was all class, and often I get distracted by these razzle-dazzle type of players like a Zahn Sullivan. I think it's that hissing mullet, and I often overwrite the looks of Perofeta, almost sweep him under a rug, but this was another reminder that he is an extremely quality footballer, and he could play his way into that All Blacks utility spot. Of course, he's debuted before, he'll be behind D-Mac, but when you think of 10-15, someone that can cover both off the Remu, Stephen Perofeta, he's probably that next cab off the rank. Keen to hear your guys' thoughts there. But a great start to 2024 for Stevie P. The Crusaders, they went down to Munster 21 points to 19 over there in Ireland. Must point out as well, these Japanese and Irish sides, they're almost midway through their season, so they've played a lot of code. Our lads still in the pre-season, and this sent a lot of Crusaders fans and Super Rugby fans in general into a panic. Some of the comments on the Instagram post saying the old post-Razor era has now kicked in. Not many Rob Penny is going to struggle this year. I will say one thing, Crusaders fans, I think you need to relax. Again, I have my predictions next year on how I see these sides stacking up in Super Rugby, but you got to factor in no Scotty Barrett, old dog roll, no Moody, no Fletcher Newell, no Will Jordan, David Harville, Sevu Reece, Dallas McLeod's daughters, lots of your top cattle not playing in this game, so I absolutely think that you guys will be fine. Shout out to old Alex Nankerville as well, who ripped for Munster. I think it's only a matter of time before we see him wearing that Irish green once he's eligible, probably in the 13 jersey, partnering up with ex-chief and fellow Kiwi Bundy Arki. So promising signs for him. And then finally, the Chiefs, they went down to the Panasonic Wild Knights and what I classed a bit of an upset, 38 points to 14. Again, no All Blacks, no D-Mac, no Luke Jacobson, no Anton Leonard-Brown, no Shooter, no Taukei'aho, so lots of big names missing, but an interesting result nonetheless. This week though, we rip into the week 2 games, and this is where I expect all sides to have bums back on seats and those top flight footballers back in the mixer. We have a bit of a Super Saturday, kicking off at 8:30 and then wrapping up with a 6:30 kickoff as well. So Crusaders, they will take on Bristol, 8:30 a.m. on your Saturday. All of these games, they're live on Sky Sport. Then 1 p.m, you got the Landers taking on the Canes in the old Sistema lunchbox, Forsyth Stadium. The first trot for the Canes, who decided not to play last week. Instead, it looks like the lads have just been moving some unreal amounts of tin in the gym. I saw Pody Rakati Stones squatted 302 kilos, which is a massive shift. Asafo Armua bench pressing 200 kegs as well. Geez, he could be in line for a massive year. So hard to stop a wrecking ball when he's in those outside channels. Young Armua. The Landers, shout out to them. They got the win last week over Moana in Queenstown. A pretty tight scoreline. I think she was 36-28, but I do expect Moana to be a lot stronger this year under Tana Umanga and with their additions like Sione Harville and Julian Savia. So good stuff from the Moana men. 4:10 p.m. we have the Blues still in Japan taking on the Cannon Eagles. Again, expect guys like Mark Talia, the world's slipperiest man, covered up in baby oil, lubed within an inch of his life, to be back out there. Caleb Clark, really excited to see how he goes this year. He looks trim, dropped a couple kilos, been training hard in the off-season, ready to try and get back into that starting All Blacks 11 jersey. Kelly Daltons, he'll probably be skip. Zahn Sullivan, Finlay Christie, they should all be back on deck. And then at 6:30 you got the Chiefs taking on the Kubota Spears, and I expect them to have all their top class troops as well. So I think this week we'll get a bit of a better indication as to how these teams stack up. Next weekend's their last preseason game before they rip in first round. I think it starts 23rd of Feb, so that is massive stuff. Shout out as well to the Fijian Drua, who I think are in for another big year. More home games back in Fiji. They just lost to the Brumbies at at the death, 43-40 on the weekend. Exciting times for Fiji and Drua fans. I think they could be a real threat in Super Rugby this year. Six Nations, week 1, that got underway as well, with some interesting results. Ireland rocking over to Paris and beating France, who looked a bit lackluster, and again, Ireland showed that they are well and truly up there with the best teams in the world when it's not at a World Cup. Geez, do they love choking there. Scotland held on for a big win against Wales as well, up 27-0, just won by a bee's dick after a massive second half shift from Warren Gatland's boys, 27 points to 26. And then England, they held out a bloody spirited Italy side. That was a close one as well. I liked Italy on that plus 17.5 points line last week for my punting. That saluted, so hopefully you got on. She was a good weekend on the punt for me, actually. Tipped out plenty of winners, but well done to England. And shout out as well to Ethan Roots, big rooter. Mentioned him last week, making his debut. East Coast Bays and Harbour lad. Ended up getting man of the match, a heck of a shift from him in his first performance wearing that red rose. So well played there. Week 2 dishes up some more doozies as well. Sunday, 3:15 a.m. This is must-watch stuff. Scotland taking on France in Edinburgh. Get up the Scots. They're, of course, my team throughout this tournament. Love me a bit of Finn Russell. Then following that, England versus Wales at Twickenham. That should be bloody interesting. Monday morning, Ireland taking on Italy in Dublin. Expect the Irish to be too good. So Six Nations starting to heat up now. They get the rest next week as well, so it should be hammer and tongs type of stuff from all these teams, laying it all out on the line. And then finally, before we move on from your rugby and rip into the old weekly wrap, saw a video that World Rugby posted through the week, and I thought I had to touch on this because she was interesting stuff. It was Angus Gardner refereeing what he likes to call a shadow game. Now, this is bizarre, and when I first saw it, I actually thought it was a bit of a piss take, but turns out it's genuine. So if you haven't seen the video, basically what it is, old Angus, he's headed down to his local park in full refereeing kit, socks, shirt, shorts, boots, the works. I think he was even mic'd up to pretend he had an imaginary TMO, because of course it's rugby, so you have to have some TMO invention. It just wouldn't be the 15-man code without it. Basically though, he runs an imaginary game and refs it for the full 80 minutes. Imagine that, you're heading along to the park, you're walking your dog maybe, getting some fresh air, you see some bloke in full kit running around, reffing a game of imaginary rugby, blowing penalties, scrum collapses, talking to the TMO, dishing out red cards, the works. Bloody interesting stuff. All that just to get a call wrong in a game and get sprayed on social media. Geez, it's a tough life as a referee, but thought this was an interesting one. Shadow refereeing, never heard of it, but well done to Angus. If that's what it takes to be at the top of your game, then you got to tip your hat to the kid. Certainly hadn't heard of that before. And Rugby Pass, they actually have a bit of a doco on what referees go through at the moment with that social media hate and everything that encompasses being on the world stage holding the whistle. So if you haven't checked it out, I recommend you do. She's a bloody good watch, and it might just help put into perspective what these referees go through online, the amount of hate they cop. She's well and truly unasked for. Weekly wrap time now, and shout out to the Black Caps who have been going great guns in their first test against South Africa. South Africa C, you could say, none of their big dogs made the trip, boarded the plane, but you can only play what's up against you. Shout out to Kane Williamson and Russian Ravinja, who both went the big lift in that first innings. Kane, he raised the bat with a century. Russian raised the bat with 240 of the best. Big fan of his, as you already know. And then Kane, in the second innings, after we skittled the South Africans for sweet fuck all, he proceeded to grab the Remu for a second knock and again raise the bat, becoming only the 5th New Zealander to score 2 centuries in a test match. In Captain Kane we trust. We're well and truly all over the South Africans at the moment. I'm recording this on Wednesday, Arvo. By the time you listen on your Thursday, this test could well be over. A great bowling display from our pacers and spinners as well. So up the mighty Caps. Fingers crossed for a 2-0 sweep and some key points in that World Test Series Championship. But of course, the big event that's going down this weekend, on Monday actually, is the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, Super Bowl 58, and she's set to be an absolute doozy. San Fran, the 49ers, taking on Kansas City, the Chiefs. San Fran, they're a great team, had a 12-5 record this year, the second best behind the Ravens, who of course, they are goners as a result of a Patty Mahomes masterclass. But I think this could be a bridge too far for the San Francisco team, despite having a handful of some of the best players in the league. Earlier this year, I gave the Chiefs no shot, but what they've done at the back end of this season, led of course by the man I mentioned before, Patty Mahomes, he has been outstanding, as has this team. For the majority of the season, their receiving unit was getting dominated. At times, they were unable to catch a cold, but in rookie, Rashee Rice, who was drafted 55th by KC, old Mahomes, he found himself someone he could trust, and over the last few weeks, guys like Valdez-Scantling, who have been dropping catches all season long, absolute sitters, they've been making some big plays too. They're a well-rounded team, KC. Pacheco, he gives them a strong running game, which San Francisco have battled to defend as of late. And of course, in Travis Kelce, old Taylor Swift's mate, his right-hand man, Mahomes has a reliable weapon that he can turn to time and time again to make big plays and convert crucial first down opportunities. So for me, I think KC win this game, and I think they do so because of the little things. Their team chemistry, their coaching staff, Andy Reid, second to none. Their experience, their leadership. They've been to Super Bowls before, whereas a lot of this Niners team hasn't. And when you break it down, arguably the most important battle of all, the quarterbacks, there is no way I can see Purdy getting the better of Mahomes. Mahomes, he's Super Bowl experience. Brock, only his second year in the league, his first Super Bowl, and I expect that he could be a little nervous, despite him being unreal this year. And this is not a Purdy hate type of thing. Drafted 262 in the 2012 draft, dead last, that is, Mr. Irrelevant. What a pick that was. To now be in a Super Bowl in year 2 is a pretty crazy feat. It's just more that Mahomes is that good. He's right up there with the greats, your Tom Brady's, your Marinos, that type of conversation, your Mannings. He really is one of the best to ever lace it up. Add to the fact that I think the Lions, they probably should have won the NFC Championship game and beaten San Fran. They made some crucial mistakes down the stretch, which I don't see Patty Mahomes and Andy Reid doing, whether it was play calling or just bounces of the ball not going their way. KC, they won't be fazed by the bright lights. The big games is where Mahomes makes his money, and I think he's going to step up and get him his third Super Bowl ring, really pushing him right up into that GOAT chat. Add to that, San Fran, they won their first 5 games of the season, shot out the gates like the one dog at Wanganui, but since then, they've gone 7-5 in their last 12 games, starting to show a bit of sign of fatigue and weakness. They've also only scored 3 points combined in the final quarter of their playoff games so far, so they've been struggling in the fourth quarter to add scoreboard pressure and make things count. KC, if you give them an opportunity, a sniff, they will make you pay, and their defense has been well and truly punching above their weight. So I've got Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce to be celebrating big time in Vegas come Monday night. Of course, it's going to be a shit show in terms of your broadcasting. They're going to be showing old Taylor non-stop throughout the game. If you're like me and you're a bit peeved off by it all, you're a genuine NFL fan and you just want to see the action, then geez, hope you got a couple cold ones to get you through it. Interesting fact as well, noticed a few of the wags complaining online about the price of suites for the Super Bowl game. Of course, it's in Vegas, it's sold out, hottest ticket in town. Normally the players' wives and girlfriends, they get the old corporate box type of treatment, but for this game, the NFL, they've priced these suites at $2.5 million just to book one out. So a lot of the players, they're not splashing out for their partners and families. They're saying you can sit in the cheap seats with us peasants, your regular folks. So a lot of angry wags out there who will no doubt be venting their hardship on social media. Something else to keep an eye on. Shout out to Usher, halftime show. Of course, 40-minute halftime for the NFL. Again, I think this could come back and hurt Brock Purdy, who's never been there before. Mahomes, he's been there and done it. That is a shitload of time to sink into your oranges and Powerade for the break. It can really cool you down, and it could probably get into your head mentally as well. But Usher, he'll be there in his Skims. Kim Kardashian did the intro for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if she features yet again. Yeah, Let It Burn, Confessions. The bloke's got plenty of bangers. No doubt he'll have the old six-pack out as well, so something else to watch. I know a lot of you don't love your footy, but you tune in for the halftime show, so I'm sure Usher, he'll be bringing out all the dance moves, the big guns, a full troop, I am sure, so keep an eye on that. Should be a great game though. I'll be riding with KC, as I'll allude to more now in the old punting segment. Heck of a segue from me there. Time to talk punting, of course, brought to you by the legends at the TAB. If you're not already a TAB customer, head along to their website, www.tab.co.nz, or download the app. It's the home of sport and racing punting here in New Zealand. They've got plenty of juicy offers for this weekend's action. Remember, it is 18 plus. And please always gamble responsibly. First sport we're covering, just was harping on about it, but I thought I'd run you through my best bets for this one, my power plays, and a couple other options that have tickled my fancy for this Super Bowl. Monday, of course, in Las Vegas, she all goes down. My best bet for this one is on that head-to-head market. I've just got to back the Chiefs here. I can't believe they're still underdogs, paying $2.03. They just beat the Bills and the Ravens in back-to-back road playoff games. They eliminated that number 1 seed Ravens as well without even breaking much of a sweat. They've earned my trust. I can't bet against Mahomes again, so I'm backing them in there over the San Francisco 49ers. For your MVP bet, I've also got to go with Patty Mahomes, and there's actually a boost on this to make it a little more juicy. Quite often we have these quarterbacks, they win MVP. Every so often you get a wide receiver like a Cooper Kupp who had that unreal day for the Rams, but I think if the Chiefs are to get it and Mahomes gets his third ring, then you've got to back him in to get that MVP. $2.45 that has been boosted up to, so I love that. If on the other side you're backing San Fran, you don't agree with my logic, then I think Christian McCaffrey is your best bet at $5. Purdy's at 3s, but I like CMC to be the better value option there for them. In terms of your player props, a couple other markets that I like. I really like Isaiah Pacheco to get 30 plus run yards. That's a power play in each half, paying $3. The Lions ground attack, they did whatever they wanted against the Niners in that conference final. In the first half alone, they ran for over 100 yards and finished the game with 182 rushing yards in total. Pacheco is a beast, got the high knees of doom, looks like he's hungry for a touchdown every time he touches the pigskin. Back him in to cover that at a decent price, $3 there. And I also like him, speaking of touchdowns, to dot down as well into the end zone, $1.83. Love that for Pacheco's. In terms of some power plays, if you wanted to get Ivan Leary here, I've picked out a juicy option at $23. Bear with me, obviously those high odds reflect the probability, but I didn't mind this option, and that's each team to score a touchdown and a field goal in each half. I do think this game is going to be reasonably tight, so there will be field goals from both sides. Historically, Purdy starts a little slow, so maybe the Niners, their first points are via the field goal, then a touchdown in each half. Really don't mind it. That's paying $23. Thought that was overs, but again, punt with caution there. Sometimes if you're like me though, you just get sucked up by a juicy power play, then I don't think that is a bad option. For my same game multi here to round us out as well, there is that super same game claim promotion in the mixer as well. If you place a 3+ leg same game multi on the Super Bowl, it misses by 1, the TAB will refund your bet as a bonus bet up to $50. For that, I've chucked together 3 legs of the best, gone with KC head to head, Pacheco to score, and Christian McCaffrey to score as well. 2 of the great running backs, that's paying $4.30. Don't mind that, and I'll be having a flutter there. To reinforce though my best bets, I'm on KC to get the win head to head at $2.03. Mahomes for the MVP boosted at $2.45, and Pacheco to cover that 30 plus run yards in each half, power play at $3 of the best. For your Six Nations, odds aren't up yet at time of recording this on a Wednesday arvo like I mentioned, but just looking ahead at these fixtures, I like Scotland at home to win over France in a close one. England and Wales, that's an avoid type of game for me, a real coin toss. Neither extremely impressed me last week, so I think this game could go either way. Then for the Ireland-Italy game, I'm fairly confident Ireland will get the 13+ win at home in Dublin against a spirited Italian side, but I just think Ireland are that good. They're my odds-on favourites to win the thing, so factor that in. And then finally, Last option I wanted to point out for the punting segment is the NRL Futures Multi-Builder promo, which has just been launched on the TAB app and website. They've gone ahead, given you prices for each team to make top 8, top 4, or to win the premiership. You can multi them up together and create yourself quite a lucrative little return. I'll give my top 8 predictions next week, as I've stated many a time, but if you want to jump on now, have an early look, and lock in some good prices before a few more punters get in the mixer as well, then I can tell you, the Warriors, they're paying a juicy $1.72 to make the top 8 and a crazy $3.60 to repeat last year's efforts and finish in the top 4. If you're like me, you think a premiership is just around the corner, she gets even better. We're paying $18 to win our first ring. Parades down Queen Street. I'll see you there. $1.72 top 8, $3.60 for top 4. Crazy for me, and I will well and truly be indulging in some of that action. My best bet for this week, though, and we're 1 from 1 with Scotland saluting last week for the best bet at the 1 to 12 market. That was good stuff. This week, I'm going with KC head-to-head, $2.03, broken record. Just chuck it on your slips. Magic multi of the week. Unfortunately, we went down by a leg last week on the 3-leg multi. Liverpool, the old heart bet, you'll never walk alone. They got toesed up by Arsenal. That was a tough loss to swallow, so we're 0 from 1 there, but this week we right our wrongs and get back to 1 and 2, 50-50 grouse stuff. I've gone with KC head-to-head, Scotland head-to-head, and then Ireland 13 plus to throw together what I'm hoping is a pretty safe little magic multi. Again, shout out to the TAB. That's where I'll be placing all my Super Bowl bets on Monday, and good luck if you are having a cheeky little flutter this weekend. Right, that's us for another episode of Surly Talk Sports. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the weekend sporting action ahead as well. There's plenty to sink the teeth into. Super Saturday for the Super Rugby. The Test, she could well still be going, fingers crossed. The Breakers, they got a massive game. The Phoenix, still top of the table. They'll be back in action. Super Bowl, Six Nations, something for everyone. So go well and truly rip in. I'll catch you back here, same time, same place next week as well to chew the fat and talk all things sport. Go well, have a good weekend. How good.